To the Senate Ethics Committee, it is close. I welcome you to the last Ethics Committee meeting of the session. I appreciate you being here. I'll call the meeting to order. If you would, please join me in prayer. I'll open with some prayer. Father God, we're grateful. We're grateful and we're humble. We need your wisdom and your patience and your grace as we work to do what is in the best interest of those who live in our great state. We ask that you be here with us today and that you guide us in these proceedings. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we only have one bill on the agenda, HB 976, a couple, three quick ground rules. This is the time where we're going to consider amendments and actions. So a couple, three ground rules. We'll get the bill off the table, and I want to distribute to the committee kind of a working document that shows us what we'll be doing and in what order we'll be doing them. Currently, we have 6 amendments on the table, and we will review those in reverse order of where they were offered by the senators, starting with number 6. The rule is, or what I'll ask is that as we go through the amendments, that the author of the amendment take 2 minutes to address the amendment. We'll then allow the committee 2 minutes to ask any questions associated with that amendment, and then we will take action on the amendment. Is that acceptable to the committee? Thank you. I appreciate your indulgence. Our goal is to complete this in a timely manner. There's a large number of actions that are being dealt with across the Capitol this morning. So I would entertain a motion that we remove HB 976 LC 473074S from the table.
So moved.
I have a motion by Senator Williams, a second. Second by Senator Payne. So, without objection, HB 496 is removed from the table. Copy of that. As you look at what we're doing, we're going to begin with the base bill that we discussed at length on Tuesday morning. I believe we took about 2.5 hours. We went through the bill in detail. We accepted substantial amounts of public comment. We appreciate that. We then took amendments from the committee. We have 6. We will deal with those first. We also have a couple of perhaps additional amendments we'll consider after these 6 have been addressed. But let's begin with Senator Estevez. You have amendment number 6. That would be in your folder as AM 0101, and I understand you have a substitute. Is that correct, Senator? In your packet, it should be in order, in numerical order by amendment number. Senator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I understand you have a modification to this amendment. Is that correct?
There is, Mr. Chairman. The proposed amendment would allow...
would you state the amendment number, please, and I'll distribute it?
Once I get a copy.
All right. It's coming to you. Amendment 470106. Yeah, we send them both ways.
Okay.
This is AM 470106. And the idea behind this amendment is to allow the Board of Registrars through their respective counties to impose a reasonable charge on challenges. And my original amendment was broad, and the sub limits the ability to impose a reasonable charge to by the Board of Registrars to any person that files 500 or more challenges in a 1-year period. And that is to try and be reasonable and not limit those who may be, as has happened for many years, if someone knows that someone has passed away or has moved away, and you challenge 1 or 2 people, that makes sense. But what we've seen in several counties is people filing mass challenges by the thousands, and that has led to increased costs for our counties and additional burden on voters. So this would allow the Board of Registrars through the county to make a reasonable charge, similar to the amendment that would allow for the superintendent to charge for those scans.
Thank you, Senator. Does the committee have any questions for Senator Estevez?
I do.
All right, Senator Levin, Senator Levin, Senator Harbin,
Yes,
on number
thank you.
11.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm just looking here, what is a reasonable charge? I think that in this issue that we're dealing with is what's reasonable. I mean, that's an undefined term. You know, is it $1 per head or what is it? I think we need to define what that is and not leave that open to just whatever the scrutiny of a person is.
We have
nail
only
that
2
down.
minutes for discussion on each amendment.
Okay.
And I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. Senator, that language mirrors the language that's in the Open Records Act and statutes across the Georgia Code. And what we're hoping there is that that same standard that we use for open records would be used here. And there's also an additional provision that requires the Board of Registrars to use the most economical means.
Senator Williams.
I just wanted to ask Legislative Council, can we legally do this?
Mike 1, thank you.
I'm unaware of any legal prohibition that would be in place to prevent this. The General Assembly has the full sovereign legislative authority of the state unless prohibited by the Constitution or federal law, and I'm not aware of any provision of either of those that would prohibit this.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question.
Thank you. The senator from, where are you from? I don't even know. Isn't that terrible?
I'm from a
good
little-
senator from where I don't know. How's that? I'm
Little
sorry. Sorry.
slow-growing county to the north of Atlanta. called
Little
Forsyth
slow-growing
County.
county to the north.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify there actually are limits in the Open Records Act. I believe they're 10 cents per copy. They have to reflect actual cost. And there's actually a number of things in the Open Records Act that do codify limits on government and what they charge. I think the intent of that is that the fees would not become a burden or discourage people from interacting with government in a legal way. So I certainly understand where Senator Harbin's coming from.
Thank you. All right, I would say, thank you, Senator Dosal. I would say I have concern of making a requirement to make a challenger pay a fee until we have a clear understanding of what that fee is. But I will defer to the will of the committee. The amendment is on the table. It was moved by Senator Estevez, seconded by Senator Mallow. All those in...
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
just to clarify really quickly, it is not a requirement. It is a may. It's optional.
I appreciate the clarification.
Just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate clarification. I still have some reservations.
Okay,
Will of the committee, all those in favor of amendment number 6 indicate with the uplifted hand. I see 3. Those opposed, like sign. I see 4. So amendment 6 fails. We're going to move on to amendment number 5. Again, Senator Estevez, you have amendment number 5, which is AM 470095, moved by Senator Estevez, seconded by Senator Jones. Senator, please address your amendment. This is AM 470095. This would delete lines 96 through 111, and also delete lines 118 through 120. It would remove
Yeah,
the
that
state
was,
election board's appeal review.
That was the amendment that I think everyone agreed on based on feedback from the governor and from the Secretary of State that we remove Section 2 and the corresponding line in Section 3.
Very good. Any conversation, any questions for the author? Hearing none, what's the will of the committee? Those in favor of amendment number 5 indicate with the uplifted hand. I see 5, 6, thank you. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 4. Senator Gooch is not here, and Senator Hatchett is not here. So I will be happy to address this particular amendment. If you would look, it clarifies, excuse me, the mailing address of the homeless. It is Section 1, subparagraph 1.1 on line 20. There are actually 2 amendments, and I want the wisdom of the committee on these amendments, alternative amendments. This is 470097 and 470098. And I will take the liberty of expressing my preference. My preference is for the second amendment, the more recent amendment. If you would look at that one carefully, it says the mailing address for the election purposes of any person of this state who is homeless and without a permanent address shall be established by the Board of Registrars of the county in which such person resides, provided, however, that such address must be a government facility owned or operated by the state or a political subdivision thereof. That amendment basically allows us to assign an address to a homeless individual and allows the local Board of Registrars to determine which is the most appropriate address. Senator Williams.
Could that be a post office?
It is not a political subdivision of Georgia. It's not of the state. It's not the state.
It's a government facility
It says government facility of what?
owned by the state.
Operated,
Yeah.
owned or operated by the state of Georgia or a political subdivision of the state of Georgia. So it could be the registrar's office, the courthouse. It could be any county-owned facility. So it's not a post office. It is a state-owned facility, owned and operated. There's the Senator Gooch. We're working on your amendment, Senator. I understand it was midnight if I heard. You probably didn't get home till way after that. Senator Harbin or Senator Payne? Senator Harbin?
Pardon, yes. Question here. How many, is there a way to even know this or put this in here? Is if we've got 200 or do we have 50, the number that's there would be of concern with me. Is there, could we know that there's 500 people or 250? What's the number that's at that one address? I think it's critically important.
This is not a, it's not an individual address. It is a government address in a government building. And I'll defer to, if the leader chooses to, I'll defer to the leader. We're looking at amendments 0097 and 0098 dealing with the clarification of the mailing address for homeless, Mr. Leader.
Let me look at this one. All right, here we go. Sorry, I just realized I grabbed my wife's reader.
I know that feeling.
Doe was always looking at those. They are school.
It's very becoming, Mr. Leader,
They
very
are
becoming.
my school colors back home, but anyway, y'all can laugh. It's all right.
It's all right.
There's not much other to laugh about. Tell me which amendment it is. Which
It's
number?
amendment 470098.
All right.
It's clarification of the mailing address for the homeless. If you recall, Senator, we were struggling with how best to define the mailing address for those individuals who do not have a permanent residence.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to line 20 of the underlying bill, section 1, subparagraph 1.1.
You're asking me my opinion on that?
I would say if you look at the 2 proposed amendments of how best to clarify mailing address, We originally had it at the courthouse.
Yep.
Amendment number 0097 moved it to the location of the registrar's office in the county.
Gotcha.
And amendment number 0098 provides discretion and clarifies it's the mailing address for election purposes of any person of this state who is homeless and without a permanent address shall be established by the Board of Registrars of the county in which that person resides, provided, however, that such address must be a government facility owned or operated by the state or a political subdivision thereof. So it can be the registrar's office. It can be the clerk of courts. It can be any government, state or local government facility. It just adds a bit of flexibility, Senator.
My only thought is, you and I both have served as local
Yep.
county commissioners, but there's a lot of county property that gets leased out through MOUs or leases to other entities. Some of them are nonprofits. It can be a museum. It can be an Indian group of people. You know what I'm saying?
But they're not operated.
They're owned.
They're owned, but they're not operated by the.
It doesn't say and operated. It says or operated.
That's
So
true.
you could own a county building, and you could lease it to a group of activists. And so then you would be directing, let's just say it's a Republican Party of the home county that has a lease on that county-owned building. That's a legal lease.
That's true.
Is anyone in the Democratic Party going to trust that all these ballots get sent to the headquarters of the GOP? I think that could create some confusion and
Would you
problems. and it
prefer to
could
move
change.
back to the former?
I would keep it at a known entity, at a known location, with the people who are responsible for making sure those ballots are protected and they're sacred.
And that would be the registrar?
Either the registrar's office or the clerk of the Superior Court, in my opinion. Which is what 0097 is.
0097 says the registrar's office of the county in which such person
And
resides.
that was the original intent.
That was.
Earlier this week that I recommended. So I'm okay with clerk of Superior Court if the clerks aren't going to give us 100 reasons why they shouldn't do it. But personally, I think the registrar's office is the one who's going to have to certify these people or residents of that community. And I think, therefore, it's not going to be a blame game. If you start pushing the responsibilities out to other people in the county, then it creates more confusion. So I would just say, let's keep it at the registrar's office until somebody can prove that it's not a good idea.
Could I ask you to consider, instead of using the term residence in 0097, adopt the first portion of 0098. It says the mailing address for election purposes of any person in the state who is homeless or without a permanent address shall be the registrar's office of the county in which they reside.
Yes,
Is that comfortable?
yes.
Shall be the registrar's office in the county in which they reside. Legislative Council, is that acceptable? All right, I have Senator Harbin.
Question.
Briefly.
Could we just simply ask that the registrar, does he publish the number of ballots that are addresses that are there? Can he do that?
That is, it's not, that's public information. And by the way, this is just established, this is not a ballot situation, Senator. This is where they would re-register
Right.
to receive mail.
But I'm asking is there any way to know how many people are in that category of people that are being published there?
The registrar's office can give you that.
He can give us that. Okay, thank you.
Senator Estevez.
Just one suggestion, Mr. Chairman, to the leader's amendment. Wouldn't changing or to and operated address the concern and provide counties some flexibility there? Because it would still have to be established by the Board of Registrars. So the Board of Registrars each board would then dictate where that mailing address would be. just to provide those counties flexibility. But I think that would be a simple one-word change.
You know, I'm not going to argue just to be arguing, so I would only caution that I think what we want here is consistency across the state. That's what we've tried to emphasize on all these bills. And having 159 counties, having 159 different locations creates confusion for everyone at the state level, especially. I just think having one location makes it easy, and that way you're not letting other people try to manipulate where that location is. It may be in the the farthest away place you could get in a county. I think it should be centrally located. The county courthouses are all in the legal organ or the legal county seat, and typically that's in the government complexes, and the registrar's offices are usually in that same area. So I think it's pretty easy, personally, just keep it simple.
Let's close our discussion on this, and let's verify that we know exactly what we're addressing.
And there's probably somebody in the audience that takes exception to, some county has it differently.
We appreciate that. Working from Amendment 470098, 470098 would now read, the mailing address for election purposes of any person of this state who is homeless and without a permanent address shall be the registrar's office of the county in which that person resides. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Lear?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second for the adjustments to amendment number 4. Second? Second. That was second from Senator Payne. All those, we had healthy discussion. All those in favor of Amendment 4 as modified indicate with the uplifted hand. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. We appreciate that. So number 4 adopted as modified. And now we're moving to Amendment number 3. Number 3. Again, this is Senator Estevez and Senator Jones. This is Amendment number 0096.
Thank you.
This would totally strike section 1.1 from line 20. We've already modified it in the previous amendment. So the Amendment 4A we just adopted, modified it, and now Amendment 3 would strike that section. Senator Estevez?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to
Would you be comfortable withdrawing that motion?
yeah,
Thank you.
that's what I was
I appreciate
took the words
that.
right out of my mouth.
Since we agreed on 4A, if you would, that'd be helpful. And then we're moving now to number 2. This clarifies jurisdiction. After the words jurisdiction, this is 470100. It would add the words as confirmed by a government office. Again, Senator Jones, I believe you were the sponsor of this amendment, and your colleague, Senator Estevez, was your second. Did you address that amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. When you look at where some of this information is going to come from, we were talking about whether a person is deceased or they have a voting or registration is changed. A lot of that is going to be contained in a government office, and so this basically just streamlines where you would find that particular information at if you're going to try to use probable cause. And of course, this is not limited to these particular areas. So it's just saying if you're going to say the person is deceased, you actually use that official information from a government office. If they've changed their election, voting, or registration as a form of probable cause, you're going to use just a government office, and it just streamlines where you would get that information from. And
it would be confirming information, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
It would be confirming information.
Yes.
So that you could utilize it, and I believe the paragraph points this out, you could utilize any number of sources, various sources to consider that issue. but
Right,
you
you're
must
not limited
need
to this particular.
Some government office to validate that information.
That's correct.
Senator Harbin?
Just curious, government office is a pretty broad term. Does it not need to be more specific from that standpoint? If I said go to the government office, that is a very broad term. Does it not be more defined than just government office? I find that just to be very, very vague in the context of how I read it.
Right. So what you have here is a potential for different. So if a person is deceased, you may receive that from one particular government office. So instead of trying to narrow it down to any particular office, when you start talking about a person election, voting, or registration, that of course will most likely come from the Board of Elections, but it could be also another government office. Instead of trying to pinpoint one government office for each one of these particular examples, just basically be more general and say government office.
Is it not true, Senator, that this government office could be a government office of the federal government?
Based on this reading,
It could be a state office or a federal office.
Based on this reading, it could be,
Exactly.
yes.
So it could be, if I wanted to base it upon the registration of voters in Alabama. So if I suggested that this person was registered in more than one state, I could verify that
Use
through
Alabama.
through Alabama.
That's correct.
Right. So we don't want to limit it, I don't think, Senator. Senator Dolezal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to get caught up on this code section here. Can the whip walk me through? I'm thinking about my constituent who filed cases that had the case before Judge Jones that was adjudicated earlier this year, and in which they won. And they had done a mass voter challenge based on NCOA data that they had, which I see is referenced later on in these other lines. And I'm curious, in his case, what the resources of a local government office would be to confirm NCOA data, because that's not something that's tracked at the local level. So would they be required to go to the post office to confirm, I guess, what's already been confirmed? Like functionally, how would this work when a lot of these people are using government databases, government-generated databases, to obtain this data? In your mind, would that suffice, or would they need to get some sort of a sign-off from a, quote, government office to confirm what's already been provided, perhaps on a website?
The government office provision is just one provision of establishing the probable cause. You could still use the others. As it says, probable cause shall include but not limited to these particular factors. So I would say that could possibly still be probable cause. But if you look at these particular individual factors, I think that's what we're saying has to come from a government office.
Yeah, and it's actually the shall include that concerns me on this, because there's nothing in this as written that I'm seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that actually compels the government to respond. So if you are seeking confirmation from an office and they're not compelled to respond, and even in some cases we know right now there are, in this county actually, we've heard testimony in other committees about violation of open meeting laws where the government's actually not responding to open records requests where they are compelled to respond. So I'm just concerned about that language in particular being included without any sort of enforcement mechanism. I think that it may shift the burden. I should say it may shift the power back to the government, as opposed to right now the power being with the person who's making the challenge.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some of this was discussed, Mr. Chairman, in the last meeting, but the NCOA database in the statute is maintained by the U.S. Postal Service, which is a government office.
Government office.
So that would be confirmation. The concern around this amendment was related to using random databases that are privately owned that tend to be out of date.
Outdated.
And not confirmed by any government institution. That was the primary concern. So doing a Google search and going to the first website and using that information versus using something like the NCOA.
Senator Williams?
That would also be like going to the tax commissioner's office and figuring out who's filed homestead exemption.
Yep.
Yes.
So that would be a government office, an
Right.
example, that if I've got a homestead exemption in Baldwin County, I shouldn't be voting in another county.
I agree. I think the intent of the amendment was to ensure that when challenges are brought, that we verify that the information in the challenge is confirmed. Is that not
Some
true?
type of confirmation, correct?
Confirmation. We're ready for action on amendment number 2. No more questions. All those in favor of amendment number 2 indicate with the uplifted hand. All those opposed, like sign. I see 4. I see 5. Motion is defeated. Finally, we're on amendment number 1, which is a amendment to deal with access to ballot information, and I'd invite Chairman Blackman to come up and speak to this amendment. It was offered by Senator Gooch and seconded by Senator Williams, but it is a component of the HB 426 bill that Chairman Blackman had in the House, so I'd invite him to speak to amendment number 1. And I believe we're really working from amendment number 1A, which is 470102. Is that correct? That's what I have, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's what I have, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. This, essentially allows, access to these ballot images via open records request up to 600 DPI, and it kind of piggybacks on what the Secretary of State's, program of ballot images, that are uploaded upon completion of the election, and consistent with our commitment to transparency and our citizen-run elections. And I think you're again mentioned the other day a garden variety type of issue would be if the original images at a lower resolution provided some question that you could file open records and you could access those through the open records request. I know there's one sentence in here that has been asked to be addressed, and that's line 9 through line 12, and it would just remove a redundant sentence. It's the superintendent may charge the requester a reasonable fee for making such scans all the way down to and scanning such ballot, because that's already covered in the reference to section 5018-71.
Thank you. Senator Gooch, since this was your amendment, are you good with making that strike?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for the author of this amendment, Senator Estes?
Yeah, I generally support the amendment, but one question just logistically about how this could potentially cause an issue is that line 12, where it says a person making a request pursuant to the subsection may observe the scanning and related handling. If a person makes such a request after someone else has already done it, or maybe a few days after it's already been done, already available, and then they say, I want to observe the the scanning, could this make it to where these folks have to repeatedly scan ballots that have already been scanned once? Does that make sense?
It does. I think you're probably in a situation where, if I had to guess, and somebody smarter than me may have to speak to this, but if you've got sealed ballots, they're open for specific records request, then you would have to reseal and then you'd have to unseal them again. So I think that's probably consistent.
Is it not true, Mr. Chairman, that the requester would be responsible for any cost associated with that?
It is. That's
That's
correct.
spelled out, so that if someone made the request and paid for the information, and a second person came and made the same request, regrettably, they would have to make the same payment, which I would hope they would choose to work together because the information's available.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, the original was to allow access to copies or the paper ballots, and this was a compromise that would, assist in those that we're handling.
And I would hasten to point out that the Secretary of State has a pilot program to provide these ballot images online. We'd like to increase the resolution, but there's some technical issues and some cost issues associated with that. This is a good compromise. This is a good way to make sure that people who have concerns about ballots and ballot images have access to them, and I appreciate the chairman for bringing it. Senator Harbin.
Question. This then would require a 600 DPI, you're saying, resolution to be used. Am I correct?
The scanners now that, as I understand it, scan the absentee ballots.
Right.
Already have that capability.
At the tabulation center, the scanners typically have that resolution. They are currently not certified to be used in the tabulation process, but they would be appropriate for use in the imaging process in this language. So I acknowledge the fact that we'd like to increase the resolution, but not all precincts would have the capacity, but generally speaking, each county would have at least one scanner that could accommodate this need.
Okay.
Thank you very much. What's the will of the committee? Those in favor of Amendment 1, AM 47102 as modified indicate with the uplifted hand.
So moved.
We got the motion on the table. Okay, so are we good? All right, I see unanimous. Is that correct? Senator Dolzall, you okay? Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Blackman. Thank you. We're gonna work through a couple of housekeeping amendments, and I'll be happy to share those with you. If you look on Section 1, line 35, it deals with ownership of a rental of a post office box. We had some input from the public on Tuesday that highlighted the potential need to clarify that. So there's a recommendation that after the word box on line 35, we insert the language or private mailbox service address. A comma. So proof of ownership or rental of a post office box, comma, private mailbox service address. I guess we should say or. Is that correct? Ledge Council, are we okay with that, Mr. Morelli? If you look at line 35, we want to insert the word private mailbox service address after the word box.
Yes, the or would be.
The or would be appropriate. This is to attempt to clarify that a mailbox, a postal box, or a mailbox that's provided by a mailbox service is not an address, is not a residential address. Any questions on that? I need a motion if it's the pleasure of the committee. Senator Gooch, second. Senator Harbin. Those in favor of now Amendment 7 indicate with the uplifted hand. Thank you very much. Carries unanimously. Finally, at least I shouldn't say next to finally, on line 420, we want to deal with effective dates. Effective dates. Did you say 421? Line 420. And it would be amendment number 470103. I think we had that amendment as well. We're just providing that two of the sections, remember we removed section 2 earlier in this morning's actions. This would allow for sections 4 and 5 to be implemented on January the 1st of 25. Sections 1 and 3 would be effective upon the approval of the governor. The reason for that is sections 4 and 5 require some administrative preparation, and we want to provide the Secretary of State's office with time to make sure that those are handled effectively. So that's the reason behind this request. So this is amendment number 470103. 0103.
So moved.
I have a motion from Senator Williams. I need a second. Need a second? We'll have discussion if I can get a second. Second from Senator Robertson. Okay, Senator Estes?
Mr. Chairman, I would argue that there's an administrative change in Section 1 with the amendment that we made with the leader's motion on the residency of, or the mailing address for someone who's homeless. By making it effective immediately, we might run into some administrative issues versus allowing those registrars some time to put some processes in place prior to having to do that. And obviously that ranges, the difficulty ranges with the number of people who are homeless living in each county, but I can see where that can be a potential issue to comply with almost immediately. And that would specifically be to Section 1.
Section 1. Comments on the committee? I'm certainly happy to entertain input from the Secretary of State's office. Do you have a position on this, Mr. Gabriel? This is on timing?
We always like more time, sir.
I understand. What year is this? I can understand the senator's concern, but I would also hope that we could be expeditious as we implement these new guidelines. Senator Gooch. Leader.
Would a July 1 effective date give those local folks a little more time? Assuming the governor signs this.
Assuming the governor signs it.
May or June, that's 30 to 45 days.
I would be comfortable with that. Senator Estevez, that gives us a little time.
Good compromise.
Yeah. So what we would do is, again, on Amendment 0103 would say sections 4 and 5 shall become effective on January the 1st. The remaining provisions of the act shall become effective July the 1st. Upon approval of the governor, I'll allow Ledge Council to codify that.
I think it's already
It's okay.
the default anyway, is
I
it
think it's
not?
close. Committee comfortable with July 1st for other sections?
This year.
Yeah, this year. It's 24. July 1, 24. Thank you. All right, so the Amendment 0103 will be modified to allow sections 4 and 5 to be effective January 1st, 25, and remaining sections to be effective July the 1st of 24. Those in favor of that amendment indicate with the uplifted hand. I see 2, 4, 6, 7. And those against? 3 opposed? Thank you. 7-3. All right, we're toward the end, and I want to acknowledge Leader Butler. I know that she was in judiciary last night till midnight. I know that she has worked hard in her years and decades in this body, and I wanted to allow Leader Butler to move the final amendment. Okay. I'm going to ask the whip, if Senator Jones, if you would just make a motion, and then we'll have a discussion on.
This is an alternative if you want to salvage this.
Yeah.
I think this does it. It says as confirmed or by or listed in or by a government office, database, or website more publicly available.
Sorry. I wanted to acknowledge Senator Butler's service, and out of respect for her leadership, I want to allow and accommodate her request to move an amendment, Amendment 470088, if we'll distribute that. And I would ask that the whip put that amendment on the table and allow us to debate it. Mr. Whip?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at AM 47000088, which is to propose an amendment to section 1 concerning.
I'm not sure which section. I believe it might be a new section, Senator. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this would be a new section in the code, but it relates to 21-2-540. Right.
That's correct.
So we're not sure which section, but we think it will be a new section.
And so to amend 21-2-540, which deals with basically the timing of election dates.
Correct. And I'm going to invite Representative Draper to come and speak to this amendment. I want to acknowledge her work in this area and her perseverance. And I want to acknowledge Leader Butler's willingness to work with us on this. I want to publicly say, and I need for confirmation from the Secretary of State's office, Secretary of State's comfortable with the amendment, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And I believe the governor's office is aware of it. So Representative, if you would take a couple of minutes and share with us your amendment.
Yes, well, thank you very much to the committee, and I share your respect for Leader Butler and her years of service, so thank you very much for this generous opportunity. So what this amendment will do, it's a process fix. What it would do is when we have a special election because of a vacancy that has come up, it would allow a county election office to have that special election without a 90-day notice in front of it. It doesn't make a 90-day notice apply to that special election, because what we have right now is when somebody steps down and it's less than 90 days before the next election, the county election office has a choice. They can either throw the special election during that next election, but they have to make it what we call a separate and apart election, which is administratively very difficult. They have to use a new set of poll workers. They have to use a separate ballot for the special election. They have to use separate equipment for the special election. So it's called a separate and apart election. Or if they can't handle that administrative burden, they have to punt and hold that special election to fill that vacancy during the next election. So what we have right now is a situation where in my county, but this has happened in other counties too, we have several vacancies, and the county can't do a special separate and apart election in May, and they want to do it in November. And that would leave almost half of my county, more than half of my county, without representation for over 9 months. So this is a quick fix in the law that would allow people to have the representation that they're entitled to.
Thank you. And I want to say I've heard from a number of your constituents. I appreciate their input.
Thank you.
And I also recognize that this is not unique to your community, and to your county, and to your district. It is a challenge that we can see on a broader basis, is that right, on a statewide basis. Okay. Senator Estes, you have a comment?
And Representative, I just want to make sure that I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure the public knows that this excludes special questions and ballot initiatives. This is strictly if someone resigns to office from their office, most of the time resigning to run for something else.
Correct.
That vacancies are not held out for very long periods of time.
Periods of time.
Exactly. If it's a special question, you'd still need that 90-day notice or have to hold a separate and apart election.
Fine. Thank you very much. Any further questions for Representative Draper or for the sponsor, the whip, Senator Jones? Any questions? Second. All right. We have a motion, a second. Estes seconded. Sure. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Just for everybody to be able to hear me. Legal counsel, does this have any impact on appointments that are made in the case of a vacancy in any position? A lot of the appointments are made by the governor on an interim basis. Will this impact that in any way?
This code section, I believe, deals with local elections only. There are general laws that govern the appointments and filling vacancies for statewide offices that are separate and apart. So, I mean, there are already special statutes for filling vacancies in the General Assembly or the U.S. Senate, or for a statewide elected office, that are separate and apart from these provisions, which are almost universally used to fill vacancies in county, city, or school board elections.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Senator Robertson?
To Ledge Council also, Stuart, we just had a piece of local legislation to line up our school board in Muskogee County with the policy of the Columbus City Council being a consolidated government, so it's City Council, County Commission. If a city councilor, we had a city councilor at large who had to resign from office a little over a year ago. And so what happened is the city council appointed the replacement until the election could be held, which will be in this coming May. And we have given the school board, through local legislation, an opportunity that, should it pass, that they'll be able to do the same. Will this interfere with the ability for them to do that at all?
This will not affect any local legislation that provides procedures for the filling of a vacancy on a board. This only addresses when the election is held to fill a vacancy that's not otherwise provided for. So thank you.
Yeah.
In Columbus, the city council would still have the ability to fill the vacancy until the special election could be held. It's just the enabling legislation of some boards does not provide for that interim appointment ability. So in some jurisdictions, if you have a vacancy, that seat remains empty until the special election can be held. But nothing in here would affect any local law that provides for interim appointment abilities.
Thank you so much, Stuart.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe we're at a point now of...
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I do apologize. If this amendment is adopted, and if the goal is specifically to ensure that this helps DeKalb County, this bill would need to be effective upon the governor's signature, not July. This section would have to be effective upon governor's signature, not July 1.
Is that agreeable to the committee, to effective date? Thank you. If you would, please make a note of that as far as effective dates are concerned. I have a motion and a second on Amendment 470088. All those in favor indicate with the uplifted hand. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the committee. Thank you.
We have been working toward a resolution of amendment number 2, and I'd like to recognize Senator Dolezal for a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just kind of thinking about how to capture the intent of the committee and what you all did, but also make sure that these we're not too narrowly limiting the resources that are available. So I would move that we amend the bill by inserting on line 126 after the word jurisdiction the following: as confirmed or listed in or by a government office, database, or website, or publicly available sources derived solely from such sources. That would be the amendment. My intent therein would be that if you had scripts or data or tools that were pulling from government databases that were being used to compare voter registrations across multiple jurisdictions or states, which would not be that difficult of a script to write, that would be allowed as a source, and it would not essentially, I think as written, perhaps not as intended, but as written, it would seem to imply that you have to get confirmation from a government office. I think that rather than that, if you would just assert that you have derived, your challenge is based on something that was derived from one of these sources, that would be, I think, probably capture the intent, but also not narrow it unnecessarily.
So this is a modification of Amendment 470100, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and then if you would, please restate that for clarity.
And I would give Ledge Council latitude to wordsmith this as needed, but as I wrote it, I wrote that we would insert after the word jurisdiction, quote, as confirmed or listed in or by a government office, database, or website, or publicly available sources derived solely from such sources.
Thank you. All right, so I have a motion from Senator Dolezal to adopt amendment number 2 as modified. I have a second from Senator Williams. Any further discussion? Those in favor of Senator Dolezal's amendment indicate with the uplifted hand. Thank you very much. That's Senator Espinoza, you are opposed? Okay, one opposed? That's fine. So we have 2, 4, 7, 8. 8-1, thank you. All right, we're at that point, ladies and gentlemen. We have worked through all the amendments and all the discussion. We have a motion and a second on the underlying bill, which is HB 976. Call the question. Those in favor of HB 976 by substitute as amended indicate with the uplifted hand. I see 2, 4, 5. Those opposed? 3. Thank you very much. I would hasten to say, I want to recognize Leader Gooch.
Before you adjourn, I just want to make a comment.
All right. I'd hasten to say if we keep a track record, I think what you've seen here today is the adoption of 3 Republican amendments and 3 Democratic amendments. And I would suggest to you that I hope my colleagues across the aisle, as they may oppose the underlying bill, which I respect, they would acknowledge that they have components under this bill that they support. Would that be acceptable? Thank you very much. Mr. Leader?
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize you, Chairman. For the last 2 years, we've had a lot of debate on various election reform bills. You and Chairman LaHood over in the House have worked diligently for the entire 2-year period. And I also want to thank the people in the audience, whether you're for this bill or against it. We appreciate your input. You've been here at almost every meeting. You've given us a lot to think about, and it's been a learning experience for me. But thank you for your leadership, Chairman Burns, for what you've done to get us to where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I want to echo, thank you. I want to echo his appreciation for those of you who are here. You have been with us in the morning. You've been with us in the evening. You've been with us, and you've shared with us your knowledge, your expertise, and your passion. And even though we may not always agree on every issue, we always agree that we're trying to do what is in the best interest of the people of Georgia. And I will say one more time, I hope I don't have to reiterate it again. I only have 3 goals. Number 1, every legal vote counts, period. Every legal vote counts. Number 2, every county, all 159, follow Georgia law. And number 3, when you go to the polls, you have confidence that your vote counts, and I have confidence that my vote counts. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.